So welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining the first in our summer speaker series. This is something new with our chapter. We've never done a summer speaker series, so I appreciate your participation and support. So I am Marilyn McComb, the Executive Director of the ARC of North Central Virginia. We support people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, as well as their families, with a variety of programming and supports. We are always open for individual consults for information and referral to families. And we have a couple programs. If you check out our website, you can see what all we offer. So this morning, we are honored to have Kevin Winslow from MPower to kick off our speaker series with an exciting and informative presentation on do-it-yourself tech solutions, empowering independence, social engagement, employability, and inclusion. So without further ado, I will hand this over to Kevin.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Ooh, I just
there you go.
Well, good. I can just look at myself instead of everybody else, so I'm not all intimidated. Hi, I'm Kevin Winslow. I'm the development director here at MPower. And with me today actually is Mandy Wooten and Shelly Hart, and they are going to be working the chat. So if you have any questions along the way, you are welcome to ask them in the chat. And then we'll also do a question and answer at the end so that you can ask them live and have a bit of interaction there too. But today, I'll talk a little bit about our company. We're an assistive technology company. We also do durable medical equipment and environmental mods. But today, what we're going to be talking about is our software platform, MyGuide. It is a cognitive support platform. To give you a very little idea of what it is before I tell a little bit of our story, MyGuide houses information that you can interact with. So essentially, you build libraries of cognitive aids, things that might help you through activities, thought processes, and social interactions. So maybe ADLs, maybe appropriate conversations, things like that. You can build these guides and put them in MyGuide. And these are responsive, interactive guides. So when they're playing them, they will be able to answer a question. And let's say it's a menu of options, like for food. You know, today for dinner, I want either spaghetti or pizza or whatever. They tap an option and it can take them to like a recipe page or something like that. So that's a little bit of an idea of what MyGuide is and what we're going to be talking about today. And I'm going to do a little demonstration shortly. But how MyGuide came to be. So it's kind of a long story, but it was born out of a need. Our founding CEO, Dr. Maria McWhirter, she has a big giant background in, she was doing social work and she was advising CMS as a contractor, which is Centers for Medicaid and Medicare at the federal level. She was writing legislation, all this stuff. And at the same time, she had a bunch of kids and two of them had disabilities and she couldn't get her own kids services. So I'm going to talk a little bit about those kids. And I should disclaim that anybody that I do mention today, we have permission to talk about. Was there a question? Oh, okay. So
just background noise. If
okay.
Anybody might want to mute if you can. Thank you.
So the two kids I'm going to be talking about of Maria's, there's Daniel and Dominic. Daniel was born with very severe vision impairment. He had to have a bunch of different surgeries as a baby, and he came out the other side, and the only thing that he was able to look at was a monitor of some kind where you could control the contrast. So a TV or a computer. And that meant that he was using technology. He was using software and computers before he was even able to walk. And by the time he was 12, he was a certified software developer. At the same time, he has a younger brother, Dominic, who eventually was diagnosed with autism. And it's a very traditional story there in that we've got, on one end, you have somebody who has assistive technology that helps them on a physical level. He's got specialized glasses, special computers that he can use and adjust all the monitors and all that stuff so that he is able to see. But then Dominic, who has autism, doesn't have any kind of assistive technology that might help him through some cognitive functioning. So what happened was Daniel said, well, you know what? I want my little brother to play video games with me and all the other brothers. So Daniel built this little app, he's a teenager. He built this little app that helped Dominic play Minecraft. And it would say things like, if somebody says BRB, they mean that they are getting up from their computer, they are leaving, they'll be back shortly. You can either say this in response, or if you want to keep playing alone until they get back, you can do that. If you want to build a house, this is the button to push. If you want to raise a pig, you do these things. And I'm not going to pretend to know anything more about Minecraft than that, but it just helped him through this game. And Maria kind of caught wind of this, Dr. McWhort, and she said, if it can help him play this game, can it help him make his own bed? Can it help him maybe use the restroom independently and go through his hygiene routine and all of that? And so Daniel said, sure, and started building more and more features into My Guide. And it wasn't called My Guide at the time, but eventually they got to their 10th or so version of it. And it was this fully realized software. And they were just using it privately in their home to help Dominic through his tasks, to help Dominic interact with people. And so what she did, she started showing, again, she's a social worker. And for a little while, she was a service facilitator. And she started showing some of her coworkers. And they were like, this is incredible. This is really amazing. And you need to start sharing this. Well, because Maria had her background and understood all of the regulations that might get involved there, she was able to sort of, she was able to mold it, I guess you could say, the package of it, so that they could get it medically reimbursed for people. And so I'm going to pause that story there, and I'm going to talk about how I came into the picture and why I think I have kind of a unique perspective, because for 15 years, I was a direct support professional. I worked with my siblings for a long time. I have two siblings. I'm talking my mouth dry, 1 second. I have two siblings with disabilities. My sister has a developmental delay from a congenital heart defect, and my little brother has autism. And so, of course, my parents needed some extra support, and I left college to help them. And so for 15 years, I was their DSP. And I had seen a lot of different specialists over the years, and I'd seen a lot of different technology come in over the years, and nothing was really right. It wasn't that the technology was bad. It's just that we couldn't really find anything that would work for us in our situation. And so by the time My Guide came into the picture, I was very jaded. And I thought, I believed all of these specialists who would come in, bring this great new tool, it's going to change your life. And it didn't. And then the specialist would leave and say, well, your siblings they're not capable. And so I started to believe that. And so what did I do? I became this machine that just kind of went around, and I always describe it as I would sweep up my brother's chaos. And that's what he knew me as too, was just this big thing that would take care of everything for him so that he didn't really have to do it on his own. He didn't have to learn new skills on his own. He would just wait for me to do it. And that's the relationship that we had with each other. So when my guide came in, again, I was very jaded to technology and I didn't think much of it at all. But my brother was working with a DSP, or I was a DSP. My brother was working with a BCBA, a behavior analyst. And that BCBA had a lesson that she was trying to work with my brother. And it was for how to wash his dishes. Actually, I'm going to pull it up now. How to wash his dishes. And she just had like a laminate, that it would walk him through the steps. It had little Velcro on it that, he would walk through the steps. And it was just too chaotic for him. There's clip art, so it wasn't really personalized for him. And he just wouldn't follow it. He would look at me like I was crazy. And if I were to try to physically model washing those dishes, he would just be like, okay, thanks. And then head off and try and play a game or watch a video or something. So what I did was I thought, well, this device was deemed medically necessary for my brother. Let's figure out why. So all I did was convert what the BCBA had already done, and I put it into this digital format. I'm not even sharing my screen. Okay, can you see this? Somewhat?
Yep, we got it.
Okay, excellent. So I just took the behavior analyst's task analysis, a step-by-step instruction, and I converted it into this digital format and I separated everything. So they were one page at a time. So step 1, turn on the water. Step 2, rinse the dish. Step 3, use a little bit of soap. Step 4, scrub the inside of the dish, and so on and so forth, And we had it a bit more personalized for him. So along with these pictures, which are all of my brother's environment, that's my parents' house right here that you're looking at. Along with those personal pictures, we also had his name in there. So it would say, and again, I have permission to talk of him, but it would say, Luke, step 2, rinse the dish. And so it would draw his attention because we would turn the voice of my guide on. So it would read all of the text out loud automatically for him. And on top of that, we didn't want him touching a device with wet hands. So we had every single page controlled with a timer. So when it would tick down after 10 seconds, 15 seconds, however long we programmed it to, it would automatically flip to the next page and again, read that text out loud for him. Now, my brother being nonverbal, I truly didn't expect much. I just wanted to kind of give it a whirl. And I put it down, I put the device down next to the sink and I kind of brought him over. And I was like prepared to dodge, a handful of spaghetti or something. And he just went with it. And this was a night and day difference. And I'm sure anybody who had walked in that moment would have seen this very quiet moment where I'm like hiding behind the island, trying not to get something thrown at my head, but my brother's just doing his dishes. And so again, from that outside perspective, it was a very quiet moment. But to me, I hear like a choir of angels, and I'm feeling it. So I immediately became obsessed with this platform. And I built all sorts of different guides, hygiene, laundry, and fun stuff too, not just that, but we would incorporate videos because you can put in video modeling here as well if you need. Really any kind of digital resource, you can throw it in here. But it just became the tool that we wanted to use in our household right away. And on top of that, it was, aside from those linear task analyses that I just showed you, instead of just doing step-by-step stuff, it allowed us to also incorporate choice. And that was something that we hadn't even considered for 15 years. We had all, my brother, me, our family, we had all grown so accustomed to making every single choice for him. Every single meal that he had ever eaten, we decided, we chose for him. So by the time we finally had this platform where we could introduce choice, he didn't even recognize it when we offered it to him. But after enough times, what we did, we started with a lunch lesson and just gave him different options for eating lunch. And so after enough times of him tapping a button and he would see us pack his lunch, he recognized, oh, if I'm choosing this, if I pick this, then that goes in my lunchbox. So then that developed into a whole nother obsession for him, because he would open his lunchbox over and over, making sure none of us were changing his order. But it created eventually a completely new way of interacting. The two of us were able to start truly communicating with one another and bridging a barrier, a gap that we had never been able to before. And I was learning that my brother had all of these likes and dislikes and preferences and things that I never thought that I would be able to learn. And in some ways, maybe thought that he couldn't understand these, but I get to see now that he can. So my job as DSP from that point changed significantly, because I was able to listen to the support he actually wanted, the support he actually needed. It wasn't me banging on a door outside of his, the bathroom while he's trying to take a shower and making sure that he washes the shampoo out of his hair. My guide could take care of that kind of thing for him, because he fortunately was at the level where he could do that on his own. But what my job became was making sure, like, his behavior analyst would show on time, or making sure that everything was good with school, and any prep work that needed to happen, I could take care of that. The stuff that he just couldn't do on his own. That's what my job became focused on as DSP. And then as big brother, I got to do all the fun stuff, from there. I got to take him to movies and out to pizza and stuff. So that was cool too. But anyway, that's a very long-winded story of my story. But I do want to show another guide that doesn't, I promise, have anything to do with my family. It's a bit more involved. My meds here. It does come with a great story though, so I am going to go into that a little. But this particular individual, actually, before I go into this, I do want to pause and tell you what you're looking at here. This is my guide. This is a library within my guide. And then you can see all of these little areas here. These are shelves. And on each shelf are the guides. These are the covers of the guides of, so everything has its own subject. They go in there, they play through a guide. What ends up happening is, as they play the guide, my guide is generating a report from this lesson. So it's recording all of their responses, every button that they tap. And then at the end, it's wrapped up into a nice little report that someone on the other end, whoever that individual wants, can receive the report, and they can feed it into analytics scores. They can do all sorts of stuff with it, but they get all the raw data, and then they can organize it how they want. So I'm going to go into this sample healthy living guides. This is on our public library. Our public library is accessible to anybody. So if you wanted to go and sign up, Mandy, maybe you can type this in the chat, but if you wanted to go to app.myguide.care after this presentation, it's app.myguide.care. You can sign up for an account, a free account, and you can look at all of this material here. This comes from real users, either our MyGuide users themselves, or maybe their support team has built something. And what they'll do is they'll come in, they'll look around and say, oh, I noticed I could have really used this kind of guide. I noticed you didn't have something like that. So if you want, you can use mine, and we'll take it, we'll depersonalize it if they want us to, or if they don't want us to, we'll keep the stuff in too. And we'll throw it into this as a template. So new users who come in, they don't have to start from scratch. They have something to work off of already. But let's go into my meds now. And this particular user, very similar diagnoses to my brother. He was considered for a very long time nonverbal, and he has autism, but he was getting curious about his medication. So mom and dad started him here. Which meds are you taking? Morning, bed, or other? If I tap morning, it opens up his morning pill box. This is the pill box that he uses every day in his house. It's got his medication in there. And then below, it's got that medication identified with some pictures with it to help him as well. So if I tap on one of these, fluvoxamine, and I'm going to butcher the names of these pills, just bear with me. But fluvoxamine, in his language, or the language that they use in their household, it says helps not get stuck on thoughts. That's how they describe what this medication's doing for him. Same with bupropion, helps wake up with energy. And then if I go back up to that question and tap bed, it just flips over to his bedtime pill box. And again, all that medication is listed in there for him. Now, what ended up happening was he was looking at all of these medications over and over and over, like he was doing some kind of research. And they could see it, mom and dad could see it, because they would see in his report, oh, he tapped fluvoxamine 45 times. Well, so one day he went to mom and dad and he said, I don't think I need clonidine or whatever anymore. I don't think it's helping me fall and stay asleep, in his own way. And mom and dad were like, well, it is. And so they took him to a physician, hoping that the doctor would have a better way of explaining what that medication is doing, or maybe have better authority than mom or dad or whatever. And instead, the physician said, well, why don't we try it? He's been on this since he was a kid. Why don't we try and see what happens if he's not on it? And so they took it, they removed whichever one it was off of his prescription list, and he's been without it since, and it's been around 3 years now. And hearing that alone blew me away, because that's not even something I can do. I can't isolate medicine that I take to know if it is or isn't working, other than, some Tylenol when I've got a headache. But I was blown away by that. But what ended up happening was it led to this next part. He got to the point where he thought that people were poisoning him if they were trying to give him something as needed. So if he had a stomach ache or a headache and they tried to give him Pepto, he'd be like, whoa, I know what my medicine is doing for me. Wow. So they introduced him here to as needed medication. What's wrong? Stomach pain, nose bleeding. And then I need help is just a call mom button. But I want you to pay attention here to what I'm going to choose. I'm going to choose nose and bleeding, but I'm not going to choose stomach and pain. So if I move forward, the next page is the nose page. If your nose is dripping or stuffy, you can take an allergy pill. And then there's an open field for him, because though he is considered nonverbal at this point anyway, he's very opinionated. So there's open fields for him. He can type a response in if he wants, or verbally dictate too. You can tap a little microphone and it'll convert your voice to text for the report. But if I move on, it's the bleeding page. If you were bleeding, you can wash it, pat it dry, but the point is, we're only seeing the stuff that we are choosing in that moment. We're not being bombarded by any additional information that we don't need. We needed information about our stuffy nose and our cut. So that's what we get to see. And there's some reporting for him in here. So we took an allergy pill and a Band-Aid. That'll show up later. There's a little review area for him. How'd your meds taste? Always yuck. And then I like to pause here because I like this page because it kind of shows the essence of how you start to interact within My Guide. So right off the bat, you can see we've got these pre-programmed in answers for the parents programmed in these answers for him. He picks at his skin. This is what this page is. He picks at his skin and he'll create open wounds. So he's at risk for MRSA and cellulitis and really fun stuff. And they wanted him, because he was able to isolate that medication, they wanted him to get to a point where he could self-assess his own wounds. And so they built this Likert scale for him. But then, like, if I go with, did you pick at your skin today? And I choose yes, old. It opens up, and these are just some of the reasons why he thinks he picks at his skin, that he's hungry, that he's bored. But another thing I like to show here is that, number one, you've got these pre-programmed in answers that you can put in. You can make them responsive. So instead of a did you pick your wounds menu, it's what do you want to eat for dinner, or where do you want to go today? What tasks do you want to complete at work today? What homework do you have to do today? And they tap it and it can open up something on the page that they're on, or it can take them to a totally different sequence of events if you wanted it to. And then you also have checklists here. So this is more of a checklist down here. But I'm sure you've noticed that everything in this particular guide has been very text heavy. That is because that is what this individual needed. He did not want images because images made him feel immature. It made My Guide itself feel immature for him. He wanted just the business. But if you wanted, you could, instead of having any text at all, you could just have everything be images, everything be image based. And when they tap on an image, it can read out loud what that image is. Or you could have videos in here if they respond better to that. We have a lot of folks who do video modeling, like with their exercise routines and things like that. But yeah, any kind of digital resource that you have, you can put in here and you can use, and you can make it as responsive as you want. You can make it as minimalist or as complicated as you want to go. It really depends on where that user is and meeting them at their cognitive access. So that might be all I want to talk about in this particular guide. Yeah, here are the meds we took. We could do a little bit more research if we wanted. What's that pain one? So I think I want to pause here before I got a couple more things to show you in here, but I want to pause here and see if there are any questions that anybody had.
I was just curious, this is Amy Hunter. I was curious
Hi.
about, it sounds like the examples that you're given, especially the last one, are maybe kids with more communication disabilities as opposed to as severely impacted cognitively. And I know you mentioned like using images, but can you talk about, have you had any experience with like kids with Down syndrome or other intellectual disabilities other than autism, where it's like more of a nonverbal kind of situation?
Sure. Actually, Mandy, do you want to maybe talk about your experience?
Sure. So my son is 15 and has Down syndrome, and he's a My Guide user. And for him, we use it kind of like the dishes, the washing the dishes that Kevin was showing. He needs help with those pictures and like the micro steps. But we've also used it for counting coins and some of his IEP goals, especially during COVID. We took a lot of his goals and put them into guides for him. He's just learning to read, and we're still working on sight words. But he's at the point where all those books that, the beginning to read books are very juvenile for him. and it's not what is interesting to him. So I've created just small little books for him, just things that he likes. He's a big Friends fan, and so we put in stuff in there because for him it's all about what's interesting. You know, he's 15, he doesn't think he needs help, but once you make it engaging and interesting, and you know, he'll do anything for goldfish. And so if it's one of his chores like folding the socks, matching up socks and folding socks, we're working on fine motor skills. So he does that, and when he finishes, he clicks the button. It'll say, great job, now you can have your goldfish, or whatever it is that that person, you know, that the person works for. Positive reinforcement. Let me see what else.
You
Shoe
work-
tying.
Have you worked with the school staff? I mean, does the school staff use it as well?
His does not. There are some great teachers out there that do. Another probably a private conversation we could have. Some don't, but some are very interested. I've got a lot of my son's past teachers that are interested.
What
And-
county,
and
what
using
county
it.
can I ask what county you're in?
Yeah, I'm in Fauquier County.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I've actually met, Marilyn and I were talking about this just recently. And I'm trying to set up a meeting with one of the transition specialists. She was mind blown when we were just in a private meeting for my son. And
I'd
we
like
were-
to talk,
Yeah.
I'll have Marilyn get in touch. I'd like to put together something to talk to you and the head of assistive technology about this.
Yeah.
That'd
Absolutely.
be awesome.
Okay.
We
That's-
do have some very quick, just to piggyback off of that conversation, we do have some school systems that we've worked with. We've worked with some private schools, and we're working with Stafford County schools. We've got a pilot program there. So what we'll do is, if we have a user who wants more of their support system to be able to use MyGuide and support them, we'll just hook them up. We will set them up with training and all of that. We have daily workshops that we have that people can come to and learn how to use MyGuide. We also will do individualized stuff if they need. And it's just kind of part of the deal with us. But we don't like to just drop it off and run.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Different clinicians and stuff that are interested in working with it. I mean, I have the school doesn't really do much OT for my son anymore, but I have a sister that's an occupational therapist down in Roanoke County, and she logs on. She's a guardian on his account, and she logs on and she can create guides for him, working on tying shoes and making bed and organizing his toys into the right bins, things like that. And it'll just plop right in his account. So she doesn't have to be right with him. She can do it from her own phone, or her own iPad, or whatever. So anybody can use it, whether it's, speech, whatever the need or the goal is, there can be guides created by anybody for that.
How long does it
And-
take to create an average guide?
It varies on what you're looking to accomplish with it, but everything in my guide was designed specifically because Maria, our CEO, doesn't know how to use technology. And she was like, I need to be able to do it like it's a Facebook post. So everything in here is very tap and change. Actually, I can show you really quickly how the editing works. But yeah, you could just pop in to anything. And let's go to a regular page here. So, okay, I can't stand this, so I can just change the look of it if I want by tapping around. Yeah, it's pretty simple. And then what we've got in the next version, we have an option that we're working with. I don't know if it's going to be released right along with it, but another thing that we're looking into is AI technology and being able to basically tell AI, I need step-by-step instructions for tying shoes. And it can whip up a couple of pages And then you've got a foundation that you can just personalize or add a couple steps to if needed. So we're doing everything we can to make it as easy as possible to use, because families don't have time to be building some crazy complicated thing. But yeah, and then you can always get help too.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've got my 17-year-old creating guides for my son. Now, the next one on the list is to do an all about me guide. And it's stuff that he might not remember, or that other people might not understand that he's trying to say, because that does cause frustrations when, I understand what he's trying to say, or it might take a couple of times sometimes, but other people don't, that aren't familiar with him, but with his locker number or his bus number, anything, even my name, because to a lot of people, he would just say that I'm mom and not know my full name or my contact information if he were to wander off. And so it can prompt certain processes, like thinking processes, that might not come natural to people with Down syndrome or anything, if you get into a certain situation, certain boundaries, that they might not know. I mean, like my son knows not to leave my yard, but he doesn't know those boundaries if he's at someone else's house, or if he's at a place he's not familiar with. But Kevin, there's a question on here about if this is covered with CCC Plus, and we do work with a lot of MCOs through Medicaid. I know my son's has been approved for 2 years in a row. We have Aetna. We work with really every MCO, and we call directly to the care coordinator. We try to get everyone as involved and on the same page as possible, just so they know.
Have you ever worked with directly with Medicaid for people who don't have MCOs?
I don't know that we've done any without an MCO. Other, we do DD waiver, and we've had some approved.
Well, I'm just
through private insurance as well.
So we're on the CCC waiver, but we don't have an MCO.
Okay. We definitely try our best. And if you also have a private insurance as primary, we go through that too, and we have had some people approved that way.
Kevin, I want to make sure we have time for the rest of your presentation.
Sorry,
I don't want to sidetrack, but put questions in the chat until he's done, and then we can catch back up. I just want to make sure you have time. So.
And I did see another person who kept raising their hand, and we just kept talking. So if you want to interrupt me, feel free. But let me show just a couple more things in here, and I'll run through it really fast. So I'm sure you noticed here on this library tab, there's a lot in it, and sometimes it can look a little overwhelming, especially for new users and people who are new to technology. They might come in here and just have no idea where to begin. So our answer to that is we have this play tab, and this is where most of our users spend the majority of their time, unless they're building guides. So in the library tab, that's just where you build content and house it. But the play tab here, this is where you can keep a schedule of guides so that you can have them play at specific times. And you can have a full day of guides scheduled if you wanted. There's this today section, shows you everything that you have scheduled to play for that day. As soon as you play it, it disappears until the next time it's scheduled to be played. And what they'll get is a notification on their device that My Guide's delivered with, or if they have a device they're comfortable using, we could put it on that too. And they'll get a notification on it that says, hey, it's time to play your check-in guide. And they tap that notification and it opens up on the device. And then there's this favorite section, which is sort of I always call it the recreational guides, but really it's just easy grab stuff. So it's stuff that you don't want to have to go hunting through a library for. Nobody, when you're having a panic attack, wants to go and find a guide. They want it to be easily found, something to calm them down. Or the bathroom, calling mom, any of that stuff. You could just throw it here in this as needed section, the favorite section. And then very quickly, I'll cover the Me tab. And this is kind of the boring stuff. All your account information is there. All of the people that you choose to connect your account with. My Guide is very secure, and the user controls who their account is connected to. So they invite a clinician to view, oh, I want my clinician to see my all of my like ADL routines and all of the reports that come out of that. But I don't want them to see like, my private stuff, like my bathroom routines, or my bedtime routine or whatever. So they can make visible whatever they want and keep hidden whatever they want at the same time. They can control exactly what a person has permission to do with their account. So they can open it up completely where they can come in, edit all of the information on their behalf, help them edit guides, help them manage their account information, even help manage settings remotely. Or you can have it locked down where they can only see a couple reports here and there if needed. And then there's setting stuff. There's a whole bunch of accessibility settings that I don't really have to go into, but if you need bigger guide controls, you can throw them in there. If you need My Guide to read all of the text out loud, you can turn on that setting, that text to speech setting or whatever. Ton of stuff in here. And then this monitoring section is also in here. And this is just where all the reports go. And so anybody that your account is connected to and you're able to see some of their reports, they're going to show up here. And I'll show you what the raw side of a report looks like. Maybe, I don't know. All right, well, here's kind of one. It's incomplete, you can see there at the bottom, but this shows a couple of things. So we see they pressed button start now over and over down there. But it gives you a breakdown of every single page that they viewed. That's actually chronological. So if they go back, let's say they make a decision, I want to eat spaghetti for dinner. They move forward and then they're like, wait, I had spaghetti yesterday for dinner. Ugh, I want pizza instead. They go back, change their answer to pizza. It'll show that chronological choice making process. It's date and time stamped. Every report is date and time stamped at the top. It shows how long you spend in the guide total, and it shows how many pages you viewed. And again, that would count toward that chronology. So if maybe a guide might be like 10 pages long, but they viewed 13 pages, it's because they went back a couple of times and changed their mind. And then every page is broken down by time, how long they spent on the guide, or I'm sorry, within the page, but then on top of that, how long they spend responding to any information on that page. So if a page has like 10 questions on it, it'll show how long they spend responding to every single one of those questions. And that might be all I think I want to talk about today. And so from here, I think let's just go back.